This program is made possible by the loyal financial support of the friends and partners of Family Policy Institute.
Good evening and welcome to Watchmen on the Wall. Thank you for joining us. Tonight it's my great privilege to introduce Graham Power, the founder of Global Day of Prayer and the chairman of the Power Group of companies. Graham, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Errol. Privileged to be with you again.
And it's also a privilege for the first time to welcome Anthea to the program.
Thank you.
And Graham, you're going to introduce her properly later. Now, Graham, we asked you to come in to talk about your trip to Jamaica, your recent trip to Jamaica, with regard to Unashamedly Ethical. But before we get there, I want you to explain, for the benefit of our viewers, what is Unashamedly Ethical? What is the vision behind it? We've just seen the opening of Parliament, some of the chaos there, and now followed by the budget speech. One of the things that is worrying a lot of people is the increase in taxes, the first time in 20 years, fuel levy and other things. And a lot of people are saying that is a direct result of corruption. Billions being lost to corruption. And we've seen that even from the Auditor General that 32 billion rand is unaccounted for on wasteful, what they call wasteful and fruitless expenditure. And then municipalities also, there's billions lost in that. And I suppose government has to find the money somewhere to plug those holes, and it does that by increasing taxes. So corruption is a huge worry, and Unashamedly Ethical is an answer to the problem of corruption. So tell us what that vision is.
Errol, thank you. It's a great privilege to be chatting with you, and I've recently had the privilege the evening after the budget speech to go to a function and to hear the minister personally talking to some of the details. The following morning to go to one of the breakfast sessions with our auditors and to listen to the nitty-gritty detail. And there are a number of issues, of course, that are being addressed. And we know that this concern about corruption, of course, it plays a role. There are many other factors, far wider than just corruption. When one thinks about the mining strikes, which has reduced the amount of income out of mines, we think about the economy that is a lot quieter than it was. We think about the present growth expectation, which is way below 2%. Those are all things that are contributing. And of course, we've got so many thousands of young people that have matriculated. A number of them are today sitting at home because they've not able to study further, and there's no job opportunities. And so when you have a growing youth, and frightening to hear the percentages of people under the age of 25 that are without work. So these, I think, are the big challenges that are facing South Africa. Globally, the whole issue about corruption is like a cancer which is rolling out across the world. And I've got a little statement that I make which says, I think that corruption is the greatest issue that's facing the world. It's like the biggest weapon of mass destruction is corruption. And it's not only here. Each year we monitor, based on Transparency International, which is a German-based non-governmental organization, we monitor where South Africa stands compared to the rest of the world. And number 1 is least corrupt, and number 175 is the worst corrupt. Of the 220 nations, they're monitoring 175 nations. We as South Africa, when I started looking at this 6 years ago, we were the 45th least corrupt. Right now, we are at number 67. So we went from 45, 49, 54, 59, 64. We went up to 72, and for the first time, we've come back just a little bit to 67. So it is a huge concern. Of course, when we listen to what has happened from the auditors that have audited all our government departments, and we hear about how few a minute percentage that have got clean audits. I think in the Western Cape, when we talk about local government and provincial government, it is seen as one of the few, let's call it bright lights out there, and it's a growing concern.
So you launched Unashamedly Ethical. As a response, you started with the Global Day of Prayer, that God gave you a vision for that in 2001. And after that grew and spread all over the world, the next kind of vision you had was this clean living, and just taking that across the world, inspiring and encouraging people and governments to sign up and say, we want to be part of this, where we're going to commit to doing things properly, cleanly, without bribes and all of that. So tell us a little bit about that.
Errol, I don't want to over-spiritualize it, but let me say that I had three very clear dreams. In fact, they were so clear that I call them instructions. The one was in the year 2000 to start the Global Day of Prayer, which would start from a Newlands prayer gathering, and from there it would roll out across South Africa, Africa, and from there around the world. And this is not through my great organizing or any great committee. It started just by that one gathering at Newlands in 2001. You'll remember at the time we had 22 bombs exploding in Cape Town, lots of taxi violence, lots of issues that were going on. Now, we still have issues today. But from that day until 3 months ago, I think it was September or October, where we heard about those 2 pipe bombs that had gone off in Cape Town. Minor, but something like that had not happened since 2001. And of course, the Global Day of Prayer then rolled out, and we had all 220 nations of the world. They tell me somewhere between 350 and 400 million people participated in the year 2010. That was like the kind of 10-year window over which we encouraged people to pray together for the issues. We started off by praying for South Africa. We then started praying for Africa. We then effectively expanded that to around the world. And of course, each one still praying for their particular needs. And of course, in South Africa, we have our particular issues, whether that be HIV/AIDS, whether that be unemployment, whether that be crime, etc. So that was the one aspect, what I call the first wave. And in the year 2006, towards the end of 2006, for the second time in my life, I woke up the morning at 4 o'clock with such a download where I understood that we would see 3 waves that would cross over South Africa, Africa, and the globe. First wave is a wave of prayer. Second wave is a wave of ethics, values, and clean living. And I wear this armband with 2 Chronicles 7:14 on it, which reminds me of those 3 waves. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, ethics, values, and clean living, then I believe God promises you and I, He will hear from heaven, forgive our sin, and heal our land. And that was the 3 waves that are clearly understood. So what we're encouraging people to do, there's a pledge form. It's on the website on www.unashamedlyethical.com. In fact, if you've got your phone, you can go on and you can just Google joinue.net. It'll take you 2 minutes to put your details in there. You commit either if you're a youth, in other words, still school going, or whether you're an individual. And once you've done that, you also have the option to commit your business. If you're the CEO or the owner, you can be a professional sportsman and woman, you can be in the health sector, you can be in government or the official within government. And those are the various pledge forms that we have there. So it's been amazing to see how people have taken up this challenge. There's once you've gone on and you have submitted your details, immediately, within a minute, you will get back a certificate of the 10 points on the pledge form. One of them being that I will not pay or receive bribes. I'll speak the truth. I'll be faithful to my family relations. I'll be a peacemaker. In other words, when that taxi wants to push you off the road, in the morning, do you want to bless him or do you want to smack him? Kind of difficult things that we've got to face on a daily basis. So those 10 points, I commit. I'm not perfect in all 10. Every now and then I've got to go and I've got to repent of certain things, but I commit.
But you are asking for commitment, because that's one of the difficulties. When people don't commit to anything, then we don't get things done. But I like Unashamedly Ethical because it gives people something to grab onto. It's something that I want to commit to, that people can say, I buy into this. We see all the corruption around us. We don't know what to do about it. Here's something that you can do. You can say, I'm going to sign up and be part of this wave of clean living, of ethics, of values, and now it's spreading around the world. Before I ask you about that, can we bring Anthea in, and can you just please introduce, you said to me that she's new, she's part of the Unashamedly Ethical group. What is Anthea going to be doing?
Okay, so Anthea Abraham handles all of our stakeholder relations. So you will see that the website has got a whole new look to it. Anthea's played a key role in that. She has a journalism background. She's a dynamic young lady, and we are really thrilled to have her on board. So Anthea has gone along and looking at our thousands of members in 105 nations and trying to see, okay, have we got the pledge forms in Mandarin? Have we got it in Portuguese, in Spanish, in German, etc., so that we can get that all on board, so that people that are not, that English is not their first language, how can they feel comfortable and on board, and from there rolling out. And of course also when it comes to things like finances and speaking to all of our key donors and our members and so on, that's part of her responsibility. But Anthea has been with us for a little while, and I think making a huge difference already.
So you're passionate about Unashamedly Ethical?
I am really passionate. I think, for me it's just amazing to be a part of it, and I like what you said. I mean, Unashamedly Ethical gives us something to grab onto. That is exactly it. It's a platform where people who are feeling so hopeless and so helpless, I suppose, because of corruption, can actually say, let me join and let us do something and stand together and fight this.
And there's a 10-point plan. It's something that you can put on your wall. Absolutely. And you can say, okay, these are the things I commit to, and I'm going to trust God and pray that God is going to hold me accountable. I'm going to hold myself accountable. And we can hold others accountable as well.
I think we must maybe just touch on that. So they're really the 3 steps. You fill in your pledge form, you get a certificate, you'll get a newsletter every 6 weeks. Anthea and the team will put together testimonies, stories, challenges that people are facing. But the other key thing is that you're part of a worldwide database.
Yes.
So let's just say, Errol, that you were wanting to go to Hong Kong, or you're wanting to go to Durban, and you were looking for a bed and breakfast, or you're looking for a service, or you're wanting to get an electrician or a plumber to come and work at your home. Instead of going onto the yellow pages, you go onto the database and you see which companies have committed themselves to be unashamedly ethical. And then you can utilize their services. If you're unhappy with their services, this is step 3. You report it to the ombudsman. So in each region, in each country, in South Africa, we have 2 ombuds people, and the one is an acting judge and the other one an advocate, and the 2 of them are getting complaints from time to time, and if the company has not lived up to the commitment that it made, they effectively then can be reprimanded. They have to please explain, set right, or they could effectively be removed or be sanctioned on that list. So it's got teeth, and it's happening, and it's working.
So this is a movement. It's a movement of ethics and values, encouraging people to overcome corruption by, but you're essentially saying it starts with us. Absolutely. Before we start criticizing government and everybody else, let's start with us. Let's commit to this Unashamedly Ethical, the 10 points. Let's stand together, be part of the movement that is spread all over the world, and we want to talk about that later. But I think it's what we need. It's not everything we need, but it's a start. It is something that people can be part of. So what is your main goal?
Yeah, I think for myself, I mean, it's really, as you said, it's a movement. People need to get involved. It's fantastic. Yes, we want everyone to sign up, to join. But then, do something. Be part of a Unashamedly Ethical forum. Agree to receive our newsletter, contribute your testimonies, be willing to stand as your Unashamedly Ethical community, take a stand against any issue or challenge that you are confronting. But if we all just sit and do nothing, if we see what is going on and we do nothing, I mean, what is the legacy that we are leaving?
That's right. That statement by Edmund Burke comes to mind. All that is necessary for evil to prosper is good people do nothing. And so people getting involved and doing something is going to stem the tide of corruption. I think even just building awareness, creating awareness. It's like with human trafficking. We found out the best way to stem the tide of human trafficking, to stop this thing, is to build awareness amongst ordinary people. And the more people know about it, the more people are aware of it, and they can do something about it. And
Errol, the sad thing is that I've spoken to many people and say, well, if you're going to do business in Africa, that's the way it's done. Man, I was involved in stuff within the construction industry up till the time that I made a serious commitment to Christ at the end of 1998. And it was tough. And part of this ring and part of this, and to go back to the guys and say, sorry guys, we're no longer part of this club, and so forth. Probably the toughest call and thing that I've ever had to do. And through that, now comes this challenge. Okay, challenge not only the industry, but our country. And so I can speak of some of the things. And when you really consider, the foundation is greed. And so therefore, because everybody around us has a nicer car, a nicer house, and etc., the way to get there. So what are the role models that we're creating? If it is in the gangster-infected areas, and the role model may drive his fancy car, have 2 guns, and have 2 cell phones, is that the role model that the youngsters at the age of 10 years old are looking at? Or is it the person that is standing for good values, has got a good business, a growing business, etc., creating many jobs, looking at the upliftment of his people, etc.? And those are what we really need to see created. And if we, you and I, can say, you know what, we have done things in the past. We know that things are not the way they should be. There is good, in my view, in everybody, even in that person that happens to be in prison. Because when you really go along and you can ask that person, come on, we can do things differently. We can stand together. We can make a difference. And at the end of the day, it's for our kids and our grandkids' sake. I'm an African. I'm born here. And I say, I may be a whitey, but I'm an African. And I'm proud of being an African. And we've got to work together and we've got to pull together to make sure that this slippery slide doesn't end up being in a Zimbabwe or in, some of these countries, like even Angola, on that corruption barometer, is way down on that list. We cannot afford to get there. We will go one way.
And what it takes is leadership. That's essentially what you're talking about, Graham, is leadership. Somebody's got to stand up and say enough is enough. We can do something, begin to encourage people to do, to act, to get involved. And that leadership is what we lack in South Africa. We want to talk about where Unashamedly Ethical has spread around the world, what is happening around the world. And of course, your recent trip to Jamaica, which was a remarkable trip, and what God is doing through the ministry of Unashamedly Ethical. So when we come back, we'll be speaking more to Graham Power and Anthea Abraham about Unashamedly Ethical. Welcome back to the program. I'm speaking to Graham Power and Anthea Abraham about Unashamedly Ethical. Now, Graham, before the break, we were talking about how God called you to start this Unashamedly Ethical movement in South Africa, which is now spread right across the world. So tell us a little bit about what is happening in other parts of the world.
And we launched Unashamedly Ethical in South Africa in early 2007. And from 2007 until 2010, it was all about South Africa. And then in mid-2010, at our 10th anniversary of Global Day of Prayer, we launched it to the rest of the world. And today we're operating in 105 nations, and I'm of the view that we will be in all 220 nations. Some of those countries may be big numbers, some may be small numbers, but that we'll have representativity in every one of those countries by the year 2020. That's my hope, is that we will be there in 5 years' time.
That's a great vision.
So recently I've had the privilege of visiting a number of countries, and it normally would come by an invitation. So I got a call from the head of Wycliffe from the Caribbean, John Romers. He was here for Lausanne 2010. He heard me speak, and he took along the little book that we wrote about Global Day of Prayer, and he contacted me a year ago and he said, Graham, we have a challenge in our country. I know you're involved with Global Day of Prayer, but specifically our key issue is about ethics, and our rating on the corruption barometer is not great. We have a problem. Will you come and visit? So I went along for 5 days and have just got back. It was an amazing gathering. From the time I arrived there, the top business people of the largest banks, of the largest organizations, of them listed on the stock exchange, were involved. And they have recognized that there's a huge concern. So we started off first morning a gathering with 150 of the bishops, pastors, church leaders. tremendous buy-in and commitment. From there, we then went to a business lunch where they had from ambassadors to the top business leaders, and it was a really high-powered gathering, and where we were able to share.
What city in Jamaica was this?
So this is in Kingston, call it the capital. So Jamaica is an island of about 3 million people, and very similar in many respects to South Africa. Their rating on the corruption barometer, where ours at the moment is number 67th least corrupt, 67th being 67 out of the 220 nations in the world, they happen to be number 85. So they're a bit worse than us, but a number of similarities. And when we talk about poverty and the divide between the wealthy and the coefficient divide, they and ourselves have quite a number of things in common. And what was really exciting for me, on the Sunday we had 3 church services. They took it out on television, on radio and so forth. There were various radio and television interviews, and we had a particular gathering with all of their press. I'm talking about from all walks of
television.
And including the secular press, etc. And they were very, very interested. Of course, very interested in South Africa, because as a small nation, they had a very loud voice in the apartheid days. You'll remember that Madiba, Nelson Mandela, one of the first places that he visited was in fact Jamaica. They had stood with South Africa through those times, or should I say stood against what we stood for in those days. And I had some amazing questions asked me. So as a white guy, so what did you do? Did you do enough? And it was some really interesting questions. And I could share about my youth and how about, going along as a young contractor and saying to my managing director before I had my own business, but I've got guys of colour that are on staff. I want to invite them to the Christmas party. And but I had to get the hotel out in Saldanha Bay to give me a letter, permission to get the guys there. I had to get permission from the then Minister Chris Yennis that the guys were allowed to be at the same party. When the music started and the guys started dancing, the manager came and stopped the music. I said, what's going on? They said, no, you can be on the same venue, but you're not allowed to dance on the same dance floor. My kids cannot believe it. And I was able to share with them some of those stories. Anyway, so they wanted to know very much about South Africa. I thanked them for the role that they had played. I then had the privilege, after the Sunday's 3 services, to on Monday morning to visit the Governor-General. So this is a nation which still has linked with the Queen. So the Queen's representative is the Governor-General. Dedicated Christian, immediately signed the pledge form, and then went and met with the Prime Minister, which is a lady, a dynamic lady, with her whole cabinet. And they were having their cabinet meeting, and we thought we had 10 minutes. We were with them for about 40 minutes. They wanted to know all about Unashamedly Ethical, and by the time I left, the cabinet had signed. The whole cabinet had signed, barring one who wants to check that he's permitted to sign because he's the head of the legal fraternity, and in there it says you'll keep yourself accountable to the ombudsman. He needs to check out that side. So everybody had signed, and this lady, Portia Miller, the Prime Minister, when she arrived there, just the warmth, come along and say, give me a hug and give me a kiss. Here's the Prime Minister. I met her for the first time, and we had a chat, and they were very interested to see about Unashamedly Ethical. By the way, the opposition leader I met straight after, and he in fact said, hold on, my whole shadow cabinet need to sign this as well. Can we make copies, etc.? So he signed immediately. So all of government, the church leaders, and the business leaders have all committed.
In Jamaica? In Jamaica.
And what is interesting is I came back with my case with 500 forms from all of these top leaders. Now, normally when I get to have the opportunity to speak to a gathering, whether there be 100 people or 500 people, and then we hand out the pledge form and we ask people to commit, I normally find that 1/3 of the people would commit there and then, 1/3 would go online via the joinue.net or via the website, and they would go online and do that in the next 3 or 4 days. And then 1/3 you would never hear from again. People wouldn't get around to it, or it wasn't really coming from the heart. I found that 50% on every one of those gatherings, the average was that 50% of the people filled it in on the day, and we had the forms.
Remarkable, high level of commitment.
Yeah, so over 500 forms that I brought back, and in fact, Anthea and the team have been logging all of those. So the minute it's logged, within a minute, the person receives their certificate. So I'm excited about that. And just before that, right at the end of last year, I had the privilege of being in Brazil, which of course also has got it's one of the BRICS countries, as we know, but it also has serious challenges. And Brazil is even lower on the ranking. They have even more of a challenge. And when I got there, interesting that the head of their largest companies had just been arrested for corruption. And it was front page news. And these leaders all said, hold on, our main language is Portuguese. We will offer, the business leader said, we will put together an entire Portuguese website. We will help to do all the translation. In fact, we'll host it and we'll carry the cost of it. That's the kind of commitment.
What it does indicate, Graham, is that corruption is a growing problem and an international problem. It's not just South Africa. We know that we're obviously obsessed with the challenges we face here, but if we just do some research, it's easy to see that just about every nation in the world is struggling with the issue of corruption. And what you're offering, you can see the great need for that. That's why people are grabbing onto it so enthusiastically, is because they need something. They need some form of commitment. I remember the time, I think it was last year or the year before, we were there when the whole Western Cape government signed those Unashamedly Ethical pledge forms. And that was remarkable to see. And I'm sure you're still lobbying to get our government, our national government and other provincial legislatures to sign that. But again, Graham, it's a remarkable thing. Like Global Day of Prayer, it started in Cape Town, South Africa in 2001 and spread right across the world. You put a great focus on prayer and the need for prayer. And we're doing this call to prayer on the 21st of March. Incidentally, your first Global Day of Prayer was the 21st of March, 2001.
Human Rights Day.
On Human Rights Day.
Yes.
And so 15 years later, or 14 years later, we're doing the same thing, and we're doing it because of the chaos in our nation, what we saw at the opening of Parliament, the infighting and the parastatals and everything. We know that God's given us this weapon of prayer, and that Global Day of Prayer just spread across the world. We need to call the nation back to prayer for the nation, or call the church to pray for the nation. And so 21st of March 2015, between 10 a.m. and 5 p.m., 7 hours of united fervent prayer for the nation, and we believe God is going to answer that. And Global Day of Prayer spread, and now Unashamedly Ethical, that movement is spreading all over the world. And just what happened in Jamaica and Brazil, just what you're talking about, how people are grabbing onto that means there's a great need. Now, Anthea, if I can bring you in here, what can people watching this program, what can they do to get involved? How can they become part of it? Where do they go? How do they sign up? Are there fees to be a member? All of those things. Can you just walk us through that?
Yeah. If you go onto our website, we give you information. You can either form a Unashamedly Ethical and Unashamedly Ethical community, which is within your geographical area. If you've got, for example, a church group that has joined, you can meet regularly and discuss challenges, just share advice, etc. We also have forums, Unashamedly Ethical forums, which is more for areas of specialization. So if you're in engineering, or as Graham said, construction, has its own particular challenges, you could form a forum. But we do invite our members to contact us, to contribute their testimonies, their stories, to receive our newsletter where we share what's happening, latest developments, etc. But then also, financially, obviously, to this movement, to grow this movement and to do all the things we want to do, like improve our website, do the translations for different countries. That does cost. I'm sure with Watchmen on the wall also, it's a challenge, whatever you want to do. And I think for us especially, too often we think we have this don't have mentality. But if you just think of giving 20 Rand a month or 25 Rand a month, and if everyone does that, and you select a handful of ministries that you decide you are going to support, then we'll have what we need.
But Errol, I think to answer that question, so Unashamedly Ethical has no specific membership fee. We have a guideline where we recommend people could contribute between 10 and 100 Rand a month. or if they're a business, if they're a small business, between 100 and 500 rand a month, etc. So we have a guideline. But if anybody cannot afford or is not doesn't have the means, no problem. So in South Africa, by the way, we have over 5,000 companies that have committed to being unashamedly ethical. And we have now, it must be 25,000 plus individuals. Many more have committed, but that are on the database and that are in regular contact, that have committed themselves to be unashamedly ethical. So this is just continuing to grow. And I believe we're going to see like this wave is going to roll.
Yeah, that's remarkable, Graham, because what we don't realize, a lot of people don't realize, is that corruption is not only in government, but also in the private sector, in businesses and all kinds of things happening. And there's this wave, it's a wave of corruption, and there's this other wave coming against it called unashamedly ethical. And it's amazing that over 5,000 companies have already signed this commitment. And as you roll this out with Anthea and your team, and we get more and more companies and more individuals and organizations and NGOs, whoever, to sign that commitment and create forums and to hold each other accountable, I think that's what we need. We're doing something. That's the most important thing, is that we're doing something. What a lot of people is doing is complaining. And so it's okay to complain, because it's really, it's corruption, the way it's spreading, the money that's being mismanaged and misused and lost. It's concerning, and people can complain, but don't only complain. Complain, but then say, okay, I'm fed up with this. Enough is enough. I'm going to do something about this. I'm going to rise up, and that's what God calls us to do. God calls us to be salt and light in a nation. God doesn't call us to complain all the time. So we can pray and we can do something, like you said, Anthea. And what we can do is we pray, we get be part of Unashamedly Ethical. We encourage people in our sphere of influence. Come on, take the pledge, sign up, be part of this. And as we spread this out, obviously then we're pushing back the frontiers of corruption in our nation, because we're starting something else. And that's a lot better than complaining.
What was interesting is looking at the statistics. There's 7 billion people in the world. 50% of those people, 3.5 billion, live off less than $2, or let's call it 22 or 24 rand a day. Now, when you have that amount of poverty worldwide, whether that's in India, whether that's in Africa, any of the emerging or the third world countries, and you will find when you look at the corruption in those countries are the worst off. So somehow we will not rid the world of systemic poverty unless we can rid it of systemic corruption. Right. And I think that is our key issue. And if we are able to each one make a stand, and it starts with the small things. When that police officer comes along and you've gone through a traffic light, or you've had a speeding fine, instead of getting the fine of 300 rand, trying to give him 50 rand and drive off. Those are the small things. Others are the obvious ones. But it includes me paying my taxes correctly, as I should, even though the taxes have just been raised, etc. But those are the key things that I need to be doing. My word has got to be my word. I've got to be ethical in all my dealings, not only on a Sunday, but Monday through to Friday as well.
Otherwise, we don't have the right to complain about what's happening in government, what's happening in our country with corruption, if we don't lead by example. And it's difficult, I know it is, for a lot of people. They're angry about a lot of things, but yet God has called us to lead by example. So Graham, I want to thank you once again for coming into the studio, and Anthea for joining us for the first time. We hope to see more of you in later programs. But thank you for being a visionary. Thank you for just leading when it is necessary, because we so much need leadership in this nation, starting with the Global Day of Prayer in 2001, 2007, Unashamedly Ethical. I'm so encouraged to hear that it's spreading all over the world. What happened in Jamaica is remarkable. What happened in Brazil. And I believe God is going to give you favor, Graham, to take this all over the world, and that South Africa is going to be blessed as a result of this rollout of Unashamedly Ethical. So to you out there, get involved. The website address is on your screen. Contact Anthea, get the form, sign it, make your pledge, and stand for Unashamedly Ethical in South Africa. Welcome back to the program. My next guest in the studio is Father Peter J. Pearson, the Parliamentary Liaison Officer for the Catholic Church. Welcome to the program, Father Peter John.
Thank you very much. Delighted to be with you.
Now, we're talking about the South African Law Reform Commission's recommendation to Parliament to review Christmas and Easter as paid public holidays. And what they say in the document is that reviewing Christmas and Easter, because it's the only public holidays which are Christian in nature, but it is direct discrimination against the holidays of other faith groups. And Parliament must either remove it as holidays or give equal weight to other holidays or holidays of other faith groups. What is your stance on that?
Well, I think it must be acknowledged that this discussion has happened in a number of countries throughout the world. You know that in the United States of America, which has a vibrant faith community, the Good Friday holiday has long since been abandoned. And the idea was that people of faith should find times to worship and to celebrate those festivals on days or at times that don't interfere with work and and industry and all of that. I think a discussion needs to happen because one doesn't want to claim privilege over something without it being discussed and without some kind of a consensus emerging. I think one of the things that is true is that whether it's a public holiday in the paid public holiday sense as defined in legislation or not, we rally our people to the real reason for celebration. So I think, you know, for us as pastors, that becomes the point of evangelism, that it's very easy to take a holiday and do nothing of faith with it. This will be a call. But I think faith communities need to have an open debate. The document is out now. It's just one discussion point amongst a number. It's on page 56 of the document, if any of your viewers are interested in pursuing it. I think we need to raise our voices. So, you know, there are ways of looking at it. The notion of complementarity, where you say the major faith communities each have a day, or whether you say every person, every citizen is entitled to a day of their choice. So, you know, you say you can take 3 off. 3 days off work as paid, and whether you take Christmas and Good Friday, whether somebody takes Eid, whether another person takes Passover, is their choice, but you're entitled to it. I think in that you would probably find a sense of how we can take the discussion forward. And I think we would want to keep in a balance both the right of people to celebrate what is dearest in their heart and the values that form their public participation also, but also not want to be unnecessarily discriminatory. So I think we need to look at the creative options, like, you know, do you give everybody 3 days? Do you broaden the scope of holidays to include others? And then where do you stop? You know, you might say, okay, the 3 monotheistic religions, but then the Baha'i community and other communities that aren't part of that, you know, does one cater for them? Industry has been saying we have too many holidays. The productivity of the country suffers from all these holidays. So I think there's a discussion that needs to be had at multiple levels. I think we need to participate, we need to get people to participate, but we need to hold the models that do exist in tension.
But more interestingly, I want to speak to you about Pope Francis. Now, this Pope appears to be a very interesting character right across the world. The evangelical community also has been sitting up and taking notice of him because of some of the things he's been doing, saying in particular his outreach to evangelicals, meeting with them, talking about issues. And the one thing I noticed is, you know, we're a ministry, Family Policy Institute, based on marriage and family. We believe these are the most fundamental institutions that God has given us. And the strength of these institutions obviously determine the strength of our society. And I have noticed the mainstream media in the world, right across the world, have been trying to misrepresent what this Pope has been saying on marriage and family. And in November last year, I was invited to this, what was called the Vatican Colloquium, where religious leaders from all over the world gathered, along with the Pope, to speak about marriage and family and the complementarity of man and woman in marriage. And I wasn't able to travel to Rome to attend that. I'm still disappointed today because of that. But he made a speech there that was an incredible speech on marriage and family, on the need of children to have a mother and a father. And the most amazing thing about that amazing speech was that the mainstream media ignored it completely. Right throughout the world, they didn't publish it, they didn't make any comments or analyze his speech, none of those things. But however, they have been trying to misrepresent what he's said, what he's been saying about the gay community. They have been trying to represent what he's been saying about same-sex marriage. Now, he does appear to have a pastoral heart, his love for people, and especially, as you said before we started recording, the people on the margins of society. But before I get your response to and your comments on Pope Francis, I just want to read some portions of his speech. The rest of it we'll have on our website, familypolicyinstitute.com. If you want to read Pope Francis' speech on the complementarity of man and woman in marriage and his comments about the family, you can go to our website and access it there. But this is what he says, Father Peter John. It is necessary first to promote the fundamental pillars that govern a nation, its non-material goods. The family is the foundation of coexistence and a remedy against social fragmentation. Now, we see that in South Africa as well. Children have a right to grow up in the family with a father and a mother capable of creating a suitable environment for the child's development and emotional maturity. That is why I stress the apostolic exhortation that the contribution of marriage to society is indispensable. It's indispensable. That it transcends the feelings and momentary needs of the couple. And that is why I'm grateful to you for your colloquium's emphasis on the benefits that marriage can provide to children, the spouses themselves, and to society. And he goes on to say, in these days, as you embark on a reflection on the beauty of complementarity between man and woman in marriage, I urge you to lift up yet another truth about marriage, that permanent commitment to solidarity, fidelity, and fruitful love responds to the deepest longings of the human heart. And he goes on, it is an incredible speech. I mean, it just sums up everything that we believe in and that we stand for, that marriage between a man and a woman, this commitment, passionate commitment to each other, the role of parents to their children, the need of children for a mother and a father, and the fact that family is so critical to our society, that we cannot build a strong, viable, and prosperous society without strong families. All of this he covered amazingly in the speech. So, and the media has been trying to misrepresent what he says. So what is your comments on Pope Francis?
Look, I think it's been an exceptional moment for our church to have leadership of his broad-heartedness, if there is a word of that like that. His heart is just huge, and it's responsive, and the areas of human need, of brokenness, of pain, are the areas that he responds to. We are also delighted that the outreach to the to both the evangelical communities, to the Pentecostal communities, both of whom he knew well in Buenos Aires and had a strong relationship with. So it's not something new that he's brought into his ministry now. It is something that there's quite a lot written by pastors, by Pentecostals around their meetings with him. And a lot of it was a joint exploration on these hugely important, societally defining issues, moral issues. I think we all work from the premise that so much unites us, that we build on a biblical tradition, that we build on the witness and the wisdom of our forebears in faith, and we need to revitalize that energy that we share to make a profound impact in the society in which we live. I often say to people that we have the responsibility to ensure that our privately held beliefs have public consequences. So what we believe in our heart and what we profess with our lips, we need to make sure that we can translate that into public consequences, into policy decisions, into a voice that is on the radar screen of modern discussion. Because the voice of faith, for the last 500 years in the secular society, has been marginalized and left to the realm of, it's personal. It doesn't have a public consequence. We need to reverse that trend. And thank God the witness of believing people across the board and around the world is beginning to say, we have a wisdom that we need to bring into this discussion. I think it is very clear, and there is nothing to suggest to the contrary. The Pope has held and holds the tradition of our theological position, that marriage is between a man and a woman, that it is there for the good and for the production of children, for the good of children. It's there to mirror the love commitment that should be in the broader society. It's a microcosm of the kinds of relationships we want to see in society. Hence his emphasis on the poor, because the relationship of, you spoke about the wonderful ethic of complementarity. It's the complementarity of man and woman that in microcosm represents the complementarity between difference, between the rich and the poor, the notion of care, the notion of compassion for the other who is different needs to be brought into more than just an ethical response. It needs to be brought into a love relationship. And where's a love relationship seen? It's seen in the marriage of a man and a woman. Where's that complementarity seen? And so rather than say it's something that, is one of many consequences in society, we need to say, here is the norm. How we relate to society in all other spheres, in the economic sphere, in the sphere of education, in all of these spheres needs to be taken from that norm, not the other way around. So I think the Pope, with those who were with him and with what leaders in the faith community are saying around the world, need to be saying that. It's a reordering of our relationships, and that has consequences in all sorts of areas. So one wants to support that.
Now, I got information about the Vatican Colloquium in Rome in November last year, and a number of religious leaders were there. And the thing that I found amazing was that just about every one of them agreed with the Pope that marriage between a man and a woman is the bedrock of society, that the family is the fundamental unit of society, that children deserve and must have a mother and a father. It is essential for their health, and all of the things he said. So as far as the faith communities are concerned in this nation and countries around the world, they all agree. There's no disagreement there.
Yeah.
But yet the mainstream media pushes a completely different view. And my personal opinion is they're trying to push this on the Pope to make it seem that he's okay, he's soft on these issues, same-sex marriage, homosexuality, which he has, like you said, he has a pastoral heart. It's clear, it comes out. And he's made that very clear, his love for people and not wanting to marginalize people. And I see them trying to twist that, to turn that.
Look, I think it is one of those things that we have to live with in our times, that in a time where not only the media are powerful in themselves, but all the different means of social communications are so instant and so available, and for a generation they are forming their outlook, that it is always going to be a huge push from all sides to get people who are public figures and who hold center stage at any given moment to be the champions of whatever your personal cause is or your thinking at the moment is. It's quite interesting in the paragraph you read, he also speaks about how these eternal values triumph over the expedient. That, you know, what might be expedient for the moment is not the full stop in the evolution of human history. There are values that triumph over it. And one just has to look at some of the values espoused in this country not so long ago, and how those can be, truth eventually triumphs.
That's right.
And I think, you know, for us, we must expect that any public figure there's going to be an attempt to corral them into a particular corner. We must accept that our task, our ministry, is to continue to raise the truth, because we have the confidence that it will set us free and that we'll win. So, you know, it's a temporary kind of setback, but, you know, we just keep on saying the truth, speaking the truth. I'm glad you're putting it on your website, because people need to read that. There was the beautiful exegesis by the rabbi at the same colloquium on a wonderful reading of Genesis.
Yes,
talking about the so, you know, there are remarkable resources that we need to make available to our faith communities. And I think that's our job. You know, I can see that the media or anyone else might want to try and push people into a position where it almost seems that popular people become spokespersons, but I think we know that that'll only hold as much sway as we allow it to.
Absolutely.
So we don't. That's why we come onto programs like this. That's why we talk as pastors to one another. That's why we pray together. That's why we make commitments to reviving and restoring the moral values of this and every other nation.
Absolutely. Well said. I mean, that's exactly what we need in our time and in our history in this nation and nations across the world, is for Christians to speak out lovingly, forcefully, but to speak and proclaim the truth into public spaces. So, because as you said, the truth is the only thing that's going to set us free, and not just anybody's truth, it's the truth of God's word, of the scriptures. Sure. So Father Peter John Pearson, thank you once again for coming into the studio and speaking to us, giving us insight into the Pope, into marriage, family, all of the issues. We hope to have you on again. We're going to have you on in the near future to talk about a whole lot of other issues, but it's great to have you here. Thank you.
I'm blessed for being here. Thank you.
Thank you. That's our program for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Please visit our website at familypolicyinstitute.com and subscribe to my weekly newsletter. This is my primary method of communicating with you, so please subscribe today. If you have any comments or suggestions for the show, please write to us at info@familypolicyinstitute.com. We value your comments and your input. Remember, the latest edition of Joy magazine is available in retail stores right around the country. Please remember to get your copy. Thank you once again for joining us. God bless you, and remember to keep standing.